Hello everybody and welcome to a quick little guide on the Tamed Beast Ranger spec in Tarisland. The Ranger itself is the best DPS class in the game, and while this spec has a lower DPS ceiling than the Hunting spec, it's still incredibly strong and you'll never have any trouble topping out those damage tables. Now, this is not a build guide. Instead, we're going to go over each of the skills, how they work, how they interact with each other in rotations, and how to make the most of them to maximize your DPS in raids, dungeons, world bosses, and anything else you can think of. After all, there's no point in having the best builds without knowing how to use the class well. So the Tamed Beast Ranger is based around one key resource: collaboration rating. You can have a maximum of 80 collaboration rating by default, and you gain collaboration rating using some skills and spend it using others. But the biggest use for this is to summon your two beasts, the Fierce Tiger and the Hound. One thing to note about collaboration rating is that it regenerates by itself when you're out of battle, so you can have it full before starting any big fights. We'll talk a little bit more about how to gain and use collaboration rating efficiently when we go through the skills in just a bit. For now though, just keep in mind that managing the amount of collaboration rating you have well and keeping those beasts summoned is the key to maximizing DPS with this class. Now before we start, I want to point out that there's another version of this second skill here called Hornet Shot, which is unlocked through talents. In my experience, both versions of this skill are pretty similar in DPS, but I personally like Viper Shot a little bit more since Hornet Shot isn't better enough to be worth all the talent points you'd have to put into it. Okay, so let's look at the skills on this spec. The first skill is Wild Shot. This is your basic single target attack, which does a nice little bit of damage and gives you 10 collaboration rating per use. It also does have 2 charges, which is quite nice for spamming. So if I go up to this dummy here and use Wild Shot, you'll see that it'll do a little bit of damage and give me 10 collaboration rating per hit. You'll also see that the skill has 2 charges, and if I use them all, they'll cool down one after the other. The second skill is Viper Shot. This skill is single target as well, but it does a little less damage on hit than Wild Shot and doesn't give any collaboration rating. However, it makes up for this by applying a pretty noticeable damage over time to the target for 10 seconds. So if I go ahead and use Viper Shot on this dummy here, you'll see that it does a little less damage than Wild Shot, but it applies a damage over time to it that you can see as those purple numbers. Remember, this skill doesn't provide or consume any collaboration rating. The third skill is Summon Companion. Now this skill is what this whole spec is based around. When you use it, you will summon one of 2 beasts, either a Fierce Tiger or a Hound. Which beast you end up summoning depends on where this little arrow is when you use the skill. If it's on the left side, you'll summon the Fierce Tiger, and if it's on the right side, you'll summon the Hound. Now you can't fully control where the arrow will be. It'll basically jump back and forth between them depending on which beast you summon last. But don't worry about this too much because it doesn't really matter all that much which beast you end up summoning because you want to keep both of them up anyway. Now when you summon a beast, you can see the remaining duration for the beast on this little bar next to your collaboration rating on the side of the beast that you've summoned. When it runs out, the beast will despawn. Okay, so what do each of the beasts do? The Fierce Tiger does a pretty big hit, 90% of your attack plus 196 every 1.5 seconds, and that's about it. Just a basic single target attack every 1.5 seconds. The Hound also does a single target hit, but it happens every 2 seconds, which is slower, and it only does 46% of your attack plus 140. So it's a lot less DPS than the Tiger in terms of its attack. However, the Hound also gives you and your allies a buff to your attack by 12.5%. Which is actually a very significant buff. It's so significant, in fact, that the overall team DPS and the boss's clear speed goes up more with the Hound than with the Tiger, even though it does less damage just because of that buff. That said though, there's no real reason to try to prioritize one over the other. It's better to just make sure you have both beasts up as much as possible. In fact, keeping those beasts up all the time is the key to maximizing DPS, and if you don't use them consistently, you'll end up bottoming out on the charts. So if I use Summon Companion now with the arrow on the left side, I'll summon a Fierce Tiger. And if I use Summon Companion with the arrow on the right side, I'll summon a Hound. When I attack this dummy, you'll see that both of my beasts will go ahead and attack it with me. Next up, we've got Beast Power. This skill increases the damage that your beasts do for 4 seconds. This is a pretty nice DPS boost as it is, and later when we look at talents, we'll get some more use out of this skill. One thing to note though is that the buff affects beasts summoned before and after using the skill, and the skill is not affected by global cooldown. Now if you don't know what global cooldowns are, you'll see here when I attack using Wild Shot, there's a small cooldown on most of my other skills. You'll also notice that Beast Power is not affected by this global cooldown, so the best time to use Beast Power is in between your other skills. But don't worry about it too much for now, because we'll talk about this in rotations later on in the video. So you'll see here that my beast is currently attacking the dummy for 369 damage per hit, and if I use Beast Power, it'll start doing significantly more damage while that buff is active. The next skill is Arrow of Storm. This is the only area of effect skill in this spec, and it'll cost you 10 collaboration rating to do a nice amount of damage every second for 4 seconds in a circle around your target. You can also place a circle manually instead of selecting a target by holding down the skill button and using your mouse to place it. Now the circle isn't very large, so you do want to make sure that you get as many mobs inside of it as possible. So make sure that you work with your tanks as much as possible to group up those mobs. The damage of this skill is pretty low and it does cost collaboration rating, so you should basically never really be using this skill on bosses, but it can be useful if there's a large number of mobs grouped together, perhaps leading up to a boss, or if the boss had summoned minions. So if I use Arrow of Storm on the dummy here, you'll see it'll rain down a bunch of arrows for a few seconds that do damage every second. And likewise, I can hold down the skill button to place it manually to make sure I include this second dummy as well. After that, we have Wild Union. This is a self buff that immediately gives you 40 collaboration rating and buffs your combo rate and attack for 12 seconds. Even compared to the self buffs of other classes, this is a very useful one since it buffs you a ton and gives you a lot of collaboration rating. This skill, just like Beast Power, is not affected by global cooldowns, so it should be used between other skills to maximize efficiency. So you can see here I'm doing some damage with my auto attack and I currently have no collaboration rating. And if I use Wild Union, I'll quickly gain 40 collaboration rating and start doing more damage per hit. Finally, we have the Inscribe Stone skill for this spec. When this skill is active, the cooldown of Wild Shot is reduced by a ton and the amount of collaboration rating it gives is increased by a ton as well. This effect lasts for about 5 seconds, so if you have 2 charges of Wild Shot ready, you can use Wild Shot about 3 times before it runs out. That said, the amount of collaboration rating you gain is actually so high while this is active, you'll actually fill out your bar after using Wild Shot just twice. So it's often useful to summon a companion after using Wild Shot twice and then doing the third Wild Shot afterwards. Here I've got my Inscribe Stone skill ready and I have almost no collaboration rating. And if I use it, you'll notice that my Wild Shot now cooldowns almost instantly and each hit fills up about half of my collaboration rating bar. Okay, now that we've covered the skills, let's talk a little bit about talents. Now again, this is in no way an optimized talent build. These are just the talents that I've found to help me maximize my DPS in PvE scenarios. The first talent is Wild Shot Plus. Now this talent makes Wild Shot deal significantly more damage and increases the collaboration rating it gives by a small amount. Now the most significant part of this talent is the increase in damage because it does have a very noticeable effect on your DPS since we'll be using Wild Shot a lot to gain collaboration rating. The next talent, Associate Master, isn't very useful and I wouldn't particularly recommend it. I've just put an extra leftover talent point into this skill because it increases the max collaboration rating I can have by 10 and gives me a way to slowly but steadily gain collaboration rating passively. The next talent is Beast Resonance. This increases your combo rate by 3% and it's quite useful since getting to 42% combo rate is an absolute priority when you're running this spec. Next, we've got Wild Desire. This increases the duration of Beast Power by 1 second and provides a really significant buff to your direct damage skills such as Viper Shot and Wild Shot while Beast Power is active. Then we've got Wild Finish, which increases the damage of Wild Shot by a lot if the target is at less than 25% HP. This isn't super noticeable on mobs, but it's very noticeable against bosses because they'll spend a lot of time below 25% HP. Next, we've got Viper Hunting, which makes your beasts do more damage to targets that you've got that damage over time from Viper Shot applied to. So this is very nice to have because it requires no extra effort from you and gives you a nice little boost to your DPS. After that, we've got Ambition. This makes it so that Wild Shot has a chance of giving you a small buff that increases your haste and starts giving you 1 collaboration rating per second while it's active. Now this buff doesn't activate every time you use Wild Shot. Instead, it activates at a rate of 54% when the talent is maxed out. But the good news is that we use Wild Shot so often and the buff lasts for 4 seconds, so we'll pretty much be able to keep it up all the time. Next, we've got Beast Power Plus. Now this does 2 things. The first of it is a simple increase to the damage boost that Beast Power gives your beasts, but the second, which is the most significant part of this talent, is that it will increase the duration of any summoned beasts by 3 seconds. What this means is that if you've summoned a beast and you've used beast power, the beast will stay out for 3 seconds longer. So it's a very nice addition to beast power which you'll be using when your beasts are out anyway. Next, we've got Viper Shot Plus, which makes Viper Shot do significantly more damage per hit and significantly more damage over time, which in turn has a significant impact on your DPS. Next, we've got Call of the Wild. This makes it so that whenever you summon a beast, when you summon Companion, you'll reduce the remaining cooldown for beast power by 15%. Since summoning beasts and using beast power go kind of hand in hand, this is really nice for you to use beast power as much as possible to increase the damage and duration of your beasts as much as possible. Next, we've got Wild Combo, which makes it so that when a beast is active, your combo damage is increased by a pretty nice amount, and if there are no beasts active, your combo rate is increased by a pretty nice amount as well. Typically though, you'll have that combo damage boost more than the combo rate boost, since you're trying to keep your beasts up all the time. Then we've got Wild Union Plus, which reduces the cooldown of Wild Union by 10 seconds and its duration by 2 seconds. This is pretty useful because the buffs provided by Wild Union are pretty significant, and it's nice to have them a little longer. Additionally, because Wild Union gives us a lot of collaboration points, it's nice to have that cooldown reduced so we can use it more. Finally, we've got Wild Spirit. This increases the combo rate that Wild Union gives you by a little bit, but much more significantly than that, it makes it so that Wild Union, instead of giving you 40 collaboration rating, now gives you a full whopping 80. This makes it so that Wild Union basically just gives you a full bar of collaboration rating on use. Okay, now that we've looked through our skills and gotten our talents, how do we use them best? Well, this class doesn't really have or need rotations since there's honestly minimal chaining of skills. What I like to do to start though is to first use Viper Shot to get that damage over time up, and then summon Companion to get our first beast out, the Fierce Tiger. After that, we can use Wild Union to gain all of that collaboration rating back, because remember, with our talents, Wild Union now gives 80 collaboration rating on use. Then, since we have the collaboration rating to summon the second beast, the Hound, we can go ahead and do that. After this, we can use Beast Power for the buffs it gives to us and our companions, and to extend their duration a little bit. Finally, we'll go into Wild Shot to start getting collaboration rating again, and that's pretty much it for the starting rotation. After this rotation, you'll basically just be using Wild Shot to recover collaboration rating, while making sure you also apply Viper Shot on cooldown to keep that damage over time and any buffs we got from talents up and active. Besides that, the only thing to really keep track of are your beasts, making sure that you keep them summoned at all times. Remember to use Wild Union whenever you need some collaboration rating to summon one of your beasts. Now, flowcharts are great and all, but here's what that starting rotation looks like in game. I'll be going a little slower than you would usually, just so that you can see it clearer. And that's pretty much it. So the class isn't really that complex at all once you understand what each of the skills do. There are a few things to keep in mind though. Firstly, Viper Shot's cooldown is actually lower than the duration of the damage over time it applies, so you can and should keep it active the whole fight. Secondly, if a beast is already out, summoning it again only refreshes the timer on it and doesn't do anything else. And so doing it too early would waste a lot of that collaboration points that you worked so hard to gather. So you should only be summoning companions when they're close to or have already despawned. Thirdly, thanks to our talents, Wild Union now gives you 80 collaboration rating all at once. But since there is a cap to how much collaboration rating you can have, you should try to only use it when you have close to 0 collaboration rating so that you don't waste the excess. Finally, remember to use beast power whenever available to make your beasts last longer and do more damage. It's okay to use beast power if you've only got one beast summoned, but it is preferred to use it with both summons. So if you're close to getting a second beast summoned, hold out before using it, but if you're not close to it, go ahead and use it, it's still worthwhile. And that's pretty much everything on the rotations for this spec. Again, this spec isn't super complicated, and it's definitely one of the easier ones to use, but it's still very important for you to understand what each of your skills do in order to top those DPS charts. Now, before we wrap up, I want to talk a little bit about the Inscribe stone tree for this spec. Now, the tree for this spec is a pretty basic one where you'd rush to these 2 emblem slots by putting 1 point per node into the left and the right side. After that, we're going to fill these 2 slots with emblems that boost this node and this node, both of which give you combo percentage. We're also going to max them out because, again, combo percentage is the most important stat for this class. After that, we're going to make our way to this emblem slot, making sure that we go through this node, which also gives you combo percentage on the way. Once you've unlocked this slot, I recommend putting in an emblem that boosts this node here for later, but before that, we're going to beeline to these 2 emblem slots here by going through these 2 nodes. Once you have these 2 slots unlocked here, I recommend boosting this node with this emblem because the next priority after combo is cooldown reduction. Once you've unlocked all the emblem slots, we're going to go back and max out any combo percentage nodes that we went past. So we'll max out this node and we'll max out this node. Once we've maxed out all of our combo percentage nodes, we're going to focus on cooldown reduction, starting with this one since this one's boosted. Following that, I recommend getting this node and this node maxed out for more cooldown reduction, and finally maxing out this node for extra combo damage since it's also boosted. And that's pretty much it. Remember that the most important stat for this spec is combo percentage and then it's cooldown reduction. So make sure that you prioritize them in that order. And there you have it. That's pretty much everything about Tarisland's Tamed Beast Ranger spec. Now this isn't the most complicated or interesting class to use in my opinion, but it's incredibly strong, second only to the Ranger's hunting spec, and there's a very good reason that it's so popular. As always, I hope that I've either encouraged you to give this spec a try or helped you understand it a little bit better so you can have an easier time topping out those DPS charts in your own adventures. Thank you for watching, make sure you subscribe for more Tarisland content coming soon, and I'll see you guys next time.